Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. Edmund Emil Kemper III, also known as the co-ed killer and the co-ed butcher, was born on December 18, 1948 in Burbank, California, to his parents E. and Clarnell Kemper. In 1957, his parents divorced, and his alcoholic mother moved him and his two sisters to Montana. Edmund and his mother had a difficult relationship, as she would repeatedly insult and criticize him of his size and that he was the cause of all her problems. At age 4, Edmund was already a foot taller than all of his peers. When Edmund was 10, his mother would repeatedly lock him in the basement, away from his sisters, because she was afraid that he would harm them in some way. When Edmund was young, trouble began to emerge, as he would dream about killing his mother, cut off the heads of his sisters' dolls, and even would get his sisters to play a game called Gas Chamber, where they would lead him to a chair and he would pretend to writhe in agony until he, quote, died, end quote. Kemper's first victims were the two family cats, one of which he buried alive in the backyard, later dug up the cat, cut off its head, and put the head on a wooden stake, and the second he slaughtered to death with a knife. When Kemper was around 14, he went to go and live with his father, but soon went back to live with his mother, which didn't last long either. By 15, his mother sent him to live with his grandparents in Norfolk, California. In Kemper's life, he has experienced two near-death experiences, one of which when his sister attempted to push him in front of an oncoming train, and the second when he was pushed into a swimming pool by the same sister and almost came close to drowning. During Kemper's confession, he revealed that his mother's hatred towards him stemmed from him looking so much like his father. His mother would repeatedly tell him that no woman would ever love him and that he would live a long, lonely life. Kemper stood 6 foot 9 inches, weighs approximately 250 pounds, and has an IQ of 145. Investigators labeled him a natural-born killer and that he was able to overcome his victims both mentally and physically. When Kemper was 15, he was placed in the Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane and was able to manipulate the staff to let him use the assessment devices, which favored him in memorizing the assessment questions so he would be able to get out of the facility. After being released from the hospital, he applied to be a state trooper, but was rejected because of his size. With no other career opportunities in sight, he turned to boredom and eventually murder. Edmund Kemper committed 10 murders in the span of 9 years from 1964 to 1973, which consisted of his grandparents, mother, and several young women. Shown on the screen are some of the souvenirs that Kemper collected from his victims when he killed them. Some of these things include pictures of family members or themselves, driver's licenses, hairbrushes, jackets and shirts, and many other items. On August 27, 1964, Edmund, age 15 at this time, and his grandmother, Maud Matilda Huey Kemper, were at their kitchen table when they started arguing. Edmund left the kitchen and came back with a hunting rifle that his grandfather had given him for hunting. Edmund then fatally shot his grandmother in the back of the head before firing twice more in her back. At the time of the attack, Edmund's grandfather was grocery shopping, but soon came back and was also fatally shot in the driveway. When Edmund was questioned, he told authorities that he, quote, just wanted to see what it would feel like to kill Grandma, end quote. He also told authorities that he did his grandfather a favor so he wouldn't have to find out his wife was dead. Between May of 1972 and April of 1973, Kemper would kill 8 more people. He would pick up female university students who were hitchhiking and take them to secluded areas, usually in the mountains, where he would either shoot, stab, smother, or strangle them to death, and then would take the bodies back to his home where he decapitated them, performed oral sex on their severed heads, have sexual intercourse with their corpses, and then dismember them. Over the 11 months of killing, he had murdered 5 college students, 1 high school student, his mother, and his mother's best friend. On May 7, 1972, Kemper was driving in Berkeley, California, where he picked up 2 18-year-old Fresno State students, saying that he could take them to Stanford University. After an hour of driving, Kemper came across a secluded wooded area near Alameda. He handcuffed Pesci and locked Lucchesa in the trunk, then strangled and stabbed Pesci to death before killing Lucchesa in a similar way. After killing the 2, he drove back to his apartment, where he dismembered, took photographs of, and had sexual intercourse with the corpses. He then put the dismembered bodies in plastic bags where he later dumped them near Loma Prieta Mountain. On the evening of September 14, 1972, Kemper picked up 15-year-old Aiko Ku, who decided to hitchhike after missing her bus on the way to dance class. After the murder, he placed the body in the trunk of his car and went to the bar to have a few drinks. During his confession to police, he proclaimed that he admired his catch as a fisherman would. On January 7, 1973, Kemper, who was now living with his mother again, was driving around Cabrillo College campus when he picked up 18-year-old Cindy Shaw. He drove to a secluded wooded area where he shot her with his .22 caliber pistol. He drove back to his mother's house where he hid the body overnight in a closet. When his mother left for work the next morning, he had sexual intercourse with and removed the bullet from Shaw's corpse before dismembering and decapitating the body in his mother's bathtub. Kemper kept the head for several days, regularly having oral sex with it before burying it in the backyard, where he faced it upwards towards his mother's bedroom window. He then threw the dismembered body off the cliff. On February 5, 1973, after having an argument with his mother, he went in search of victims. At the time, there was a serial killer alert in the Santa Cruz area, and students were advised to only accept rides from cars that had university stickers on them. Kemper had such a sticker as his mother worked at the University of California in Santa Cruz. He encountered 23-year-old Rosalind Thorpe and 20-year-old Allison Liu on the campus of the university. Right as they entered the car, he fatally shot both of them with his .22 caliber pistol and then wrapped those bodies in blankets. On April 20th, 1973, Kemper's mom came home from a party and unknowingly awakened her son. He waited for her to fall asleep and then went to a room to bludgeon her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a knife. He performed the same acts as he did with the previous bodies and then used her head as a dartboard. A couple hours after his mother's death, he invited her best friend Sally Hallett over for dinner and a movie. When she arrived, he strangled her to death and created a cover story that his mother and Sally went on vacation. He then left her corpse in a closet and a note for the police for when they found the bodies. During Kemper's confession, he stated that he put her head on a shelf and proceeded to scream at it for an hour and ultimately smashed his mother's face in. He then cut out her larynx and tongue and then put it in the garbage disposal. He also ripped out her vocal cords and tried to dispose of them, but it didn't work, resulting in the tissue ejecting back into the sink. Approximately 5:15 a.m. Saturday. No need for her to suffer any more at the hands of this, quote, murderous butcher, end quote. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it. Not sloppy and incomplete, gents. Just a, quote, lack of time. I got things to do. After writing the letter, Kemper fled and drove nonstop to Pueblo, California, taking caffeine pills to help him stay awake over a 1,000-mile journey. With hundreds of rounds of ammunition and many guns in his car, he believed that he was the target of an active manhunt. After arriving to Pueblo, he realized that neither the police nor public had found it suspicious that the two just went on vacation. He found a phone booth and called the police, where he turned himself in for killing his mother, her friend, and the other 6 students. Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder on May 7, 1973. Due to the very detailed confession that Kemper provided to police, his counsel's only decision was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity to the charges. Kemper tried to commit suicide twice while being held in custody. His trial went ahead on October 23, 1973. 3 court-appointed psychiatrists found Kemper legally sane. One of the psychiatrists, Dr. Joe Fort, had investigated his juvenile records and the diagnosis that he was once psychotic. Kemper was also interviewed under truth serum by Dr. Fort, saying that Kemper had engaged in cannibalism by slicing flesh off the legs of his victims and using it in a casserole. Kemper liked being labeled a murderer. The state of California used the McNaughton standard, which is held that to establish a defense on the ground of insanity, it must be clearly proved that at the time of the committing of the act, the party accused was laboring under such a defective reason from disease of the mind and is not to know the nature and quality of the act he was doing, or if he did know it, that he did not know doing what was wrong. Kemper did know the nature of his acts, and what he did was wrong. On November 1st, 1973, Kemper took the stand. He testified that he killed the victims because he, quote, wanted them for himself as if they were his possessions, end quote. He attempted to convince the jury that he was insane based on the fact that only someone could commit these crimes as if they had escaped from reality. On November 8th, 1973, the 6-man, 6-woman jury reached a verdict. After deliberating for 5 hours, they declared that Edmund Kemper was found guilty and sane on all counts. Kemper wished to receive the death penalty, requesting, quote, death by torture, end quote. Although with a moratorium placed on capital punishment by the Supreme Court of California, he instead received 7 years to life for each count and was then sentenced to the California Medical Facility in Vacaville, California. Edmund Kemper is now 71 years of age and is currently incarcerated at the California Medical Facility State Prison in Vacaville, California. Ed says that he likes his prison life and has so far waived his rights to parole. His next parole consideration will be in 2024. Thank you.